Film is a medium that transports. All I have to do is pop myself in front of the TV to watch a movie, and I can just enjoy it, whatever place the film takes me to.
Movies have always been an escape. It gives you a whole new world to be in.
I have a rekindled love affair with movies.
Welcome everyone to this episode of Reel to Reel Talk. I am Sergio Barrera, and it is time once again to get together and talk about all things movies. Joining me as always are the other Reel to Reel talkers, Paul Britton and Susan Chisholm, and it's gonna be a really great conversation. I have this weird psychic feeling. It's almost like we just watched a movie together.
Freshy fresh, man.
Yeah.
It is. It's like I have the same feeling. Like, I don't know what it is.
I feel like we're all interconnected somehow. The numbers 2-7 come to mind. So
spelled out without a hyphen.
That's right. So welcome everyone to our show. We're excited to have you with us as always here on YouTube and wherever you find us. And today we are going to do a movie review of a recently released film on Netflix. And it to say that it is timely but historic is, I think, really the way I'd like to describe it. And so our conversation today, team, is going to be on The Trial of the Chicago 7, Aaron Sorkin's latest. I think it's fair to share with the audience that we literally watched it all together. And I think it added a nice little element of continuity in terms of our thoughts and so forth, since we're operating off of having watched it together. And we literally just watched it. And so as we record this, it's about an hour removed from the watching that we did. And before we even start talking about it, I do want to say this. This is the kind of movie, guys, that drives me to go read and learn more. And boy, I've spent the last hour over my dinner. Who was that? Okay, I know that name. I should know more. And so that to me is one of the genius results of this film. And so Aaron Sorkin, if you're not familiar, those of you out in listener land, his work, The West Wing, throw out titles, anyone?
All American President,
yes.
A Few Good Men,
there you
The
go.
Social Network, Moneyball, your all-time favorite.
Say all of those things that, Paul beat me to it.
The Newsroom.
Newsroom, yes. Newsroom was actually believe it or not, was my introduction to Aaron Sorkin.
Okay.
West Wing had not been a series that I saw when it was out. Great cast. But no, I was introduced to Aaron Sorkin's work via Newsroom. And many, many podcasts ago, I actually did an entire episode with a dear friend of mine on the work of Aaron Sorkin. So I was very excited when this movie was, being introduced via trailers and so forth. And yeah, the story is about the trial of the Chicago 7. The Democratic National Convention riots that occurred in 1968 that were just a very historical moment in terms of not only a year of just amazing turmoil in the history of our country, but it brought to the forefront those who were speaking out against the Vietnam War. And this is a dramatization of the trial of, amongst the defendants, Abby Hoffman, J.R. Rubin, Tom Hayden, and others. And again, not having a deep knowledge of the history behind this, I knew the basics. This was a great dive into helping us to understand an event in history that resonates today. So as we get started, I just want to get your impressions. Now that you've seen the film, what were your initial impressions about it? Paul, we'll start with you and then we'll go to Susan. Just give us reactions right off the bat, and we'll get into a little bit of a deeper dive.
Yeah, it's powerful. It really speaks a lot to just what happens when the resources of the government are used to silence people rather than actually enact change that helps people. And that's the overall message. I just think that's clear. But it also speaks to, as far as Sorkin is concerned, speaks to the way he likes to portray things. And he has a very specific, naivete, I would say, about how he sees people that choose to take on government service and mean to do well, but it's like, but they don't. Like, it's like, you can say, you can, like, there's not always a good guy, know, and I think Sorkin misses that here.
Gotcha.
But still conveys a really good message. I don't think the shortcomings of the movie hurt the, like the historical shortcomings of the movie hurt the overall message. But I also don't think that it's, I think there's more power behind the reality than what Sorkin feels like he wants to share, which is fine, but it's good. It's still good, but yeah.
Yeah, seen through his lens, we are presented with a particular view. So, Susan, your impressions, coming off of having seen the film, what were your overall impressions?
I really liked the movie. I liked the way that even with the serious content matter, there were still moments of humor thrown in to just kind of like break up the tension. Because there were times when, even though like this is based on a true story, so you kind of have an idea of what's going to happen. It was still kind of what's going to happen next, kind of, and the little tension breaks in there where it was just like a comment here or a comment there. It was enough to kind of snap you out of it and make you kind of laugh just for a minute. But like Paul said, like I really enjoyed the way that you turned this into, information kind of, but it was also entertaining.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, a definite history lesson that was played by a monster cast. And that's where I want to start with our discussion, because we always, when we're reviewing a film, we do look at cast, we look at effectiveness of story, and, just overall our thoughts on whether or not it was a successful film in terms of what the director's trying to put together. This cast just kept getting better and better in the first 10 to 12 minutes of this movie.
Yeah.
The way it's written is if you know of the riots, then you know the setup. I know I said cast, but let me just make this thought or say this thought. I love how we didn't see the riots prior, that it was right to the trial, and then the story was told to us during the ongoings. And so we got to get introduced to a lot of the major players very quickly in the first few minutes. And when you say names like Sacha Baron Cohen, Eddie Redmayne, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Jeremy Strong, one of my absolute favorite actors, I can't believe I haven't chosen him yet, Mark Rylance. And then the door opens and the judge walks out, and Frank Langella. And in my head, I will admit, I thought, oh, he's still alive. So I was like, wow. And so I was very pleased. This was a monster cast, whether in long portions of the film or people like Michael Keaton in small roles. Guys, talk about the cast. Susan, we'll start with you, and then Paul. This cast was just phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so when I saw the beginning of the preview, I mean, I think we were sitting there and I was like, is that Michael Keaton? So, for me, it was like, oh, hey, I know these people. I know these faces. And, and I was like, oh, is that, I found myself saying that a couple of different times throughout the movie. Oh, is that so-and-so? Oh, is that so-and-so? So, I mean, I think the casting was fantastic. The way that they just, like you said, they kept building and building and building, getting more and more and more. And then, these faces that we see that are familiar, it was a great choice. I think they didn't make any bad choices.
Absolutely. Yeah. Abby Hoffman, played by Sacha Baron Cohen, who continues to show us, Paul, his dramatic chops. I mean, as much as he does humor, This is a guy who is going to go down as one of the greats in terms of his acting, alongside Eddie Redmayne.
Yeah.
Talk, Paul, about the cast and your impressions of their work in this film.
So, it's interesting because the movie was clearly set up for Sacha Baron Cohen and Eddie Redmayne to hit it out of the park. I mean, like that's how this was set up with, as you mentioned, Mark Rylance, sort of being their pillar of support that, props them up and lends them credence. But I'll be honest, the actor who played Bobby Seale, Yahya Abdullah Mateen II, for me, and everybody's talking about Sacha Baron Cohen as the sort of like the Oscar buzzworthy guy, and absolutely, but he gets Best Supporting Actor, and it's almost a shame that there were so many good performances in this, because it's going to probably end up being a situation where there's two people up for Best Supporting Actor from this movie, And it's one of those things where it's like, oh, they're going to end up splitting the vote, and that drives me nuts, because he was so good.
Absolutely.
And the things that Bobby Seale had to put up with and deal with were like minimized. Like literally, you got a taste of it. Like, and it's like, no, it was so much worse. Like it was so much worse what he had to go through. And
Sure.
But because I had actually read up on the trial beforehand. Like actually I read up on the trial like several months ago, when the first trailer for this hit was on a sports event or something that I was watching, and then the trailer for this came up. I was like, oh my God, what is this? And so like I went and I looked it up, but yeah, I mean, and the support too, that's the key. It's just that, everybody just shows up and absolutely hits their parts out of the park. Just totally.
Jeremy Strong, who for me, one of his most recent really awesome turns was in The Gentleman, as you know.
Yeah.
And just to see him go completely the other direction.
So different.
And this is the power of this particular cast, is they were cast well for what they're good at.
Yeah.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt will go down as one of those actors that for most of his career has played, it's the same guy factor. He kind of plays the same guy. But that's what you want from him. And yet in this particular role, what I loved about it is he's used to, and I know we're not going to break it down into good guys versus bad guys kind of thing, although you want it to be. He's that character that is stuck in the middle of, I'm doing my job, but I've really got to, figure out what my place in history is going to be when this thing is over. And I have a feeling, you can correct me if you know, Paul, that maybe his character was an amalgam of prosecutors, or was, because I couldn't find a Richard Schultz.
So he actually was a prosecutor. There was a prosecutor that was Richard Schultz, but he quit shortly after the trial. Now, so there is absolutely nothing on record that indicates that he was sort of like this consciousness, or the voice of the consciousness of not all of Richard Nixon's Justice Department. The reality is that that you have an attorney general that was just a bad guy, and anybody knows anything about the history of the of Richard Nixon's presidency knows that he was a bad guy. And so I think Sorkin's taking some artistic liberty and assuming that because he left shortly after the trial, that maybe that was kind of his, even though he played the dutiful soldier, he didn't appreciate it. But by all accounts, he did actually play the dutiful soldier and did not like stand up during the reading of the whatever, like some of the things that he's not the one that suggested the mistrial for Bobby Seale. He like those are not things that necessarily happened, but I think the fact that he quit shortly after the trial, Sorkin kind of decided, this is the guy I'm going to make be that character. And so, and by the way, just the critical critique that this movie is getting, or the heat that it's taking, is that character, quite frankly.
Okay.
Because there wasn't anybody in the government that was saying, guys, we shouldn't be doing this. Let's not do this. And so,
it's that literary license of we need to find a moral compass somewhere in the midst of all of this chaos, because the movie taught me a lot of things about the event, obviously.
Right.
And I'm looking forward to reading more about it. But I was really, again, because I didn't know the history, the turn of discovering that Tom Hayden had actually said a few things that incited a crowd was a big turning point for me in the movie to go, whoa, okay, I really want to know more. And as strong as the cast was, and as much as we can say about those in this film, there is this element that I want to talk about in terms of story. Aaron Sorkin is a fantastic storyteller. Susan, I know that in the past we've talked about how dialogue-driven movies and so forth have not always been your cup of tea. I thought about that as I was watching, because I'm the complete opposite.
Yeah.
How did you feel, Susan? How effective was the story and its telling, as someone who this is not necessarily where you're originally drawn to?
It was very effective, because so a lot of the times that with dialogue driven movies, the thing that I struggle with, that I have a hard time with, is me staying focused on what's going on. There is a lot of sometimes meandering or side talk, and it doesn't really have to do with what's going on. This movie, I think, with the dialogue, it kept my attention, because it was all pertinent information, but it was also tense. Like, I had to be focused on it because I had to know what was going on. Yeah. And I also felt like, again, with those little breaks of humor, it was like, okay, it was easy to follow along and stay with it. And there was a point at which I had to step away, because we were all watching on our computers, and I had to step away, but I still had my earbuds in, so I could still hear what's going on. And I don't feel like I missed anything even there, because it kept me going with everything that was going on. I was able to follow along easily. And I think that was really effective in terms of telling the story, and it was really effective in keeping the viewer's attention.
Yeah, for me, the pacing of the film, it moved rather quickly. This was a film that was over 2 hours long, and it didn't feel that way. Paul, your impressions from a story standpoint, how effective was Sorkin in telling the story?
Yeah, he sets the tone in the first 10 minutes, the way he introduces the characters and how and why they're going to Chicago, and their motivations, and it does a really good job of cut from one character to the next, and that's the most effective scene in the movie, and it just does a great job of setting the tone for everything that comes after it, and really does help help you be ready for these story and timeline cuts that and it just totally works. And I do think he story wise, it's compelling. It can't not be. I just don't know, like, this is a moment in time that he's putting up on the screen that everybody knows about, and
Sure.
But to see it from this, from a Sorkinized lens at this time, of history, is it's tough, because on one hand you want so much to not still be here,
right?
Yeah. You want so much to not still be living the trial of the Chicago 7.
Right.
But we
haven't learned.
Adjudicating the trial of the Chicago 7.
That
60 years later.
Yeah, that I
50,
think is
50 years later.
Yeah. For me, that's the thing I think is what was so effective from a storytelling standpoint. It is, again, I love your use of the term Sorkinized version, because it definitely is. I mean, his markers are all over this movie. Mm-hmm. But I got very emotional towards the end, as the last probably 15 minutes of it played out, because I was thinking about have we even moved the needle? It's sad to have that thought, given what I see happening in
No,
our
we
world
haven't.
today.
It's we haven't. And
Yeah.
and the thing you have to remember is this movie was made and completed and in the can before
Any of
June.
this.
Before
Yeah.
June, you know, like
Yeah.
it's not like something happened, you know, the first week of June in Minneapolis, and then Aaron Sorkin said, "Hey, let's go make this movie."
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
that's not what happened.
It continues sort of that sort of unexpected and maybe, providential streak of movies that are happening or that are released during this time frame that you sit there and you go, we're still here. We're still going through these same fights and these same struggles and these same injustices. And whatever you want to say about people like Abby Hoffman and the way in which they did things, or any of these folks. I mean, even Daniel Dellinger. These are people who were fighting a fight they felt was justified, and we're still having to see people and support people in a fight today. We don't learn our lessons. I think that's one of the long-term legacies of our country. When history writes its final chapters, we were the stubborn kid that just kept learning the hard way. And I think that's a strong message that's being given here.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
Yep.
I think of what my mom would tell me as a kid. She would, and it's a cliche that many mothers have said, but I caused her to say it far more to me than to any of my siblings. And she always said, "You're just going to learn the hard way." And I was the kid who was just bad at school and didn't want to study and this and that. Well, I became relatively successful. My mother was always proud of me, but she goes, "Man, you just took the long route." And I'm like, well, here I am. And so, but that being said, I do want to talk about the overall film itself. Sorkin takes a courtroom setting, and now we'll get into some of the production notes that you guys noticed. You got to sit 7 at a table. He's working with a very complicated set with a lot of people he's got to put on camera throughout the duration of this entire trial. From a movie standpoint, I think it was done very effectively with long shots and so forth, but they did become kind of repetitive for me after a while. It was like he was picking the same shots and just inserting them over and over. That was the only thing that stood out to me from sort of a production standpoint that I felt became repetitive. And in some cases for myself distracting. How effective was this production comparative to his work, Paul? And then Susan, we'll hear from you as well. How did this movie land for you in terms of how it was shot and how it was put together?
The closest comparison we have is A Few Good Men. So, it's not even close. And I will say that Sorkin as a director could possibly go back and watch what other people have done with his material. That's all. I mean, and that's not to say that he didn't do a good job of directing the movie, just that I think that there are certain ways to I don't know that we necessarily he focuses on words so much that I don't know. I think that sometimes the emotion is not the focus because he wants the focus on the words. I thought it got better towards the end, but I do think the final once Bobby Seale was gone, I thought he did a better job. But I felt like when Bobby Seale was there, he had a really hard time with finding a focus. Because the reality is you had Bobby Seale on one side of the room and you had Abby Hoffman on the other. And quite frankly, those are the two most compelling characters in the courtroom.
Sure.
And you never see them in the same shot. And I'm not saying that they should be in the same shot, because the reason why they're compelling are two completely different reasons.
Absolutely.
And so it's one side of the scale versus another. So maybe it makes sense that they're historically accurate to have Bobby Seale sitting on the far end. but it's also frustrating because you felt that pull. I felt it. I felt the pull of wanting to know what's going on with Abby Hoffman and wanting to know what's going on with Bobby Seale at all times. So, yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Susan, your thoughts on the production aspects of the movie? Things that stood out to you, thoughts that you have about that.
Well, I was going to kind of build on what Paul was saying about the feeling of being unfocused when Bobby Seale was in the scene. I think that was intentional, because probably in that courtroom with everything that was going on, and I mean, it was a comedy of errors. If it wasn't so sad, it would have been funny with all of the different happenings and going on. And so I think that having it be like that helped kind of enhance the feeling of like, yeah, this was really a cluster. So yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking with that. I liked the way that everything, when they were all interspersed, like the different scenes of like, it was like, finishing one sentence with a scene from the past, or like, finishing that the rest. Yeah. So that's something that I've always kind of liked, that like you see it in a lot of different movies and in a lot of different, it's used in a lot of different ways. And in this one, we were seeing kind of background, we were seeing how we got here, but it also still continued to move the movie forward rather than pulling it. Because there's sometimes when you see that and it pulls it back, you're kind of like, oh, where am I now? What year is it? So, that I think in this movie, it was very effective in moving everything together.
Yeah.
But I think that was.
In addition to what the two of you are saying, I want to comment on the music and its effectiveness. The music that is used during the point at which we're seeing the events of the ride itself, interspersed with Mark Rylance's character, the Constable, the lawyer, as he's uncovering what they found with the tape, and Tom Hayden's role, and that the music is what made that for me. And that I found that throughout the film there was some really cool use of music that built the tension and really move forward. So for me, I believe that while this is not going to go down, at least in my opinion, as Aaron Sorkin's best work, it's up there. I say all you have to do is look at a series like The Newsroom, and you'll see the use of looking back to get to where we are now. Effective use of music and so forth and so on. And so this is why, for me, this film, it used so many different elements that made it really successful. And I really enjoyed it. So before we get to ratings, Paul, I want to get final thoughts from you, and then Susan on just overall any other thoughts you have on the film itself.
Yeah, I actually want to build on something that you were saying, because there's so the scene that you're talking about where Tom Hayden's words got recorded, and so it turned out that Tom Hayden wasn't the sort of the good guy throughout, that like he liked to portray himself as, and so it led to Abby Hoffman taking the stand as the lone representative from the group taking the stand. And this is a perfect example of what I was saying earlier, which is that specifically that, so you have this emotional part, and they actually, it's something that happens. It's a scene that was included in the trailer, where they ask Abby Hoffman the question. So when you came to Chicago, were you intending to start a confrontation with the police? And Abby Hoffman doesn't immediately answer, and he says, the reason, the fact that you're pausing is disconcerting, or something along those lines. And Abby Hoffman says, look, friend, I've never been on trial before for my thoughts. And that is such a powerful moment. But he cuts immediately after it. It's like, no, this is what I was talking about before, where that has to linger. That has to linger in the air. I want to see other people's expressions. That is the perfect so to summarize, that scene is the perfect encapsulation of my feeling on this movie, in that it has amazing moments, it has amazing lines, it's extremely powerful. It does not go as far as I would
Far
like
enough.
it to. It just
Yeah.
does. It's like I wanted more. I
Yeah.
just wanted, and by more, I just mean like 10 seconds here and there
Yeah.
of little things that are more impactful, or so that's where I stand on it.
I'm squirming in my seat as you're talking about that, because I remember thinking to myself, not the fade to black as it happened. I was like, oh,
it was
yeah.
I'm like, I couldn't believe it when it happened. I literally could not believe it when it happened. Like, I was like, you're cutting the scene right now? No.
I wanted there to be at least an insert from that moment. Again, like you said, let it linger. I want to see the verdict read. There's just something about, and so I don't, I'm totally with you on that.
And that's the other thing too, is that like, that's another thing that they cut right over to, the sentencing. And it's like, I don't begrudge them. I mean, we know what the verdict is.
Right.
It's not a surprise. But there's just an emotional beat that's missing after that line. And it's really missing. Like, it's not like one of those things like, oh gosh, it's like, no, there was a lot of oxygen in the room right then, and you just sucked it all out.
The balloon flew around the room as it was burst. So, Susan, your overall thoughts before we go to ratings.
I think it was I think it was a good way of, like you said at the very beginning, kind of making me want to learn more about this, and me acknowledging that while it was fiction, it was also pretty real. There were some misses, but all in all, I don't think that it was too badly impacted. I guess, like you said, there are those little snippets, those things you wish you could have had, but I think overall the movie was still good, still able to be salvaged.
Yeah, definitely a strong outing. Absolutely. So here on Reel to Reel Talk, we rate our movies when we do reviews on the 5 taco system. The most a movie can get is 5 tacos, but if we feel like it merits it, you can also add guac to whatever your score is. And so I'm going to get us started. Susan, you'll go next, and then Paul, if you'll close us out. For the Trial of the Chicago 7, I'm going to land at a strong 4 tacos, no guac, because, again, I had those moments like we talked about that just seemed like, okay, I wasn't ready to move on. And so, again, 4 for me will get me to rewatch it at some point, because I love historical dramas, and I encourage anyone who really wants to learn about an important moment in history, you got to watch this movie. You'll find it enjoyable. And for me, a strong 4 tacos for this movie. Susan, we'll go to you next.
I'm gonna also say 4 tacos. Even with those little moments of like stuttering where we kind of skipped out on something, it still was able to keep the focus. It was still able to keep it, and still was effective at giving the information out. So when it's before, no guac, 4 tacos.
All right, Paul.
Yeah, I'm actually also gonna do 4 tacos. Really, really good, delicious tacos. Honestly, if this had come out, 15 years ago, before the advent of Googling everything in the middle of the movie, or before the movie comes out and knowing the history, I might have given it the extra guac, just because there would have been aspects of it that I would not have known, and I probably, but I do think that, I just think that it just was missing the guac. It just was, it just missed the guac, but 4 solid tacos.
Excellent. Well, 4 tacos from all of us for the Trial of the Chicago 7. You can find it on Netflix, and we encourage you to do so. We also encourage you to go down the Aaron Sorkin rabbit hole if you get a chance. Lots of his material is available on streaming services, and I encourage you to look them up. So that is our discussion and review on the Trial of the Chicago 7. We'd like to remind you to find us on Facebook and also on Instagram, where you can find out what we're watching, what we're going to talk about, or what we've talked about in the past. We thank you for going over and giving us likes and following our pages. on both Facebook and Instagram. Also, if you're watching us on YouTube, we ask that you please subscribe. That way you know when our episodes land week to week. All you have to do is hit that little notification bell, and you'll know when we're up next. Yeah, so with that in mind, I just want to say it's time for our weekly segments. We're going to have a little bit of a shorter segment time. Susan, we'll see you again next week with your Susan Finally Saw segment. We'll give you some more time to watch some more movies. But we are going to find out what the hell Paul watched, and for once I can say I know. And so
he does know this time. He does know.
We'll turn it over to Paul for what the hell did I watch?
Yeah, so month of October, regular listeners know I'm doing horror movies, and the very first movie that I did with this segment came about, and yeah, we're gonna go back memory lane for a moment, real quick, and because I heard about this movie that was streaming. It's very early in this podcast, in our little adventure here, and I thought, hey, I heard about this movie. It's supposed to be pretty weird. It might be fun to do as a full discussion on. And so everybody agreed, yeah, we'll do that. And then like that night I went and watched it, and I immediately went back to everybody and said, don't watch this movie. It's not for everybody. We don't need to talk about this movie for a full segment. However, it did bring up the idea that maybe I could have my own segment where I talk about crazy, whacked out shit that I watch. And so Sergio said, yeah, great. And so we came upon the title, What the Hell Did I Just Watch, for the segment. And the movie was Suspiria. It was a remake that went straight to, I'm going to say Netflix. Might have been Prime, though. Prime. It was Prime. It went straight to Prime. And it was a remake of a 1977 classic horror movie that I had never even heard of before. So I knew nothing about the original. And so now that we're in Halloween and the original was a horror movie, I decided, hey, you know what? It's time to go visit the original, because if it could spawn something as strange as what I saw, then it's definitely, I'd like to know the source material too. So Here we are. I watched 1977 Suspiria from Italian filmmaker Dario Argento.
Yeah.
And it's fucking weird. I watched this movie and I'm like, two things happened. One, I was like, okay, I could totally see, the influence that this movie had on, in the original, or not in the remake. And two, it doesn't shed any light on why this movie is so fucking weird. My two takeaways, Sergio, are: one, this movie was really heavily influenced by The Exorcist.
Okay.
Just severely so. And like, I'm listening to this to the music, and the soundtrack is by like a Euro pop band that is apparently famous, and like, so people love the soundtrack. But I'm listening to it, I'm like, they're just trying to get away with sounding like The Exorcist without actually playing The Exorcist. What's the something bells, whatever it's called. They're just trying to not be The Exorcist, but wink, wink, we're The Exorcist. That's my first thing. And secondly, I can see why this movie actually is cited by a lot of current modern, or even, horror filmmakers from the 80s as being influential, because it is really different. And it really opens up a lot of different things that people can do with a horror movie, and trying to make art in horror movie. And I respect the hell out of it, even though it's really fucking weird, because the color palette that they chose for this movie is wackadoo amazing. Just every scene, it's just like, this is the red room and it's really red, and here's a room that's really blue, and here's a room that's really green, and it's just like, there's just I've never been in a room that looks like these rooms, but here they are. And the art direction is just ridiculously amazing, and I loved it. How insane it was. There was a one of the offices has like murals painted, and it's like an Escher. Like Escher's actually in multiple different, like there's multiple Escher esque sort of wall paintings and wallpaper and stuff throughout the movie. That, I mean, it just, the movie is clearly just trying to knock people off their feet, and just you are supposed to be befuddled and confused while you're watching this movie, and the music does that, and the art direction does that, times a million. And the fact, like, the movie was made with like actors and actresses from all around basically Europe and the United States and Canada, and that is discombobulating. It was, it takes place in Germany, but it's a very strange look at witchcraft in ballet. There
you go. Well,
Sergio, tell me what you thought.
That line sums it up. So, you mentioned the thing that first stood out to me about this film. That's the music. The music was very, very disconcerting. It really helped the notion of this was a movie that was meant to throw you off center. We're talking 1977. So the thing that for me stood out was the simple fact that we are seeing a lot of overacting in terms of the performances. I think back to the initial roommate character when they're introduced. I'm like, whoa, this woman earned her paycheck. I mean, she was like, I'm gonna act this. I get maybe 4 lines in this film, and I'm gonna act the hell out of them.
And and the art director's like, we're gonna only be in this apartment for a grand total of 2 minutes, but everybody's gonna remember what the fuck this room looked like for
exactly.
the 2 minutes.
Yeah.
It's like,
so there was a lot of those old 70s, overdone, cinematography, acting, and so forth. I've often told you guys the settings in which I watch movies, because that plays a part in sort of how I view things. I watched this on a Sunday morning while I was eating breakfast. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, no.
So I think I laughed more than I was, made to feel disconcerted or even scared.
Yeah.
But it really was, if you think about when it came out and the culture of the time, this was a movie that was well beyond what was even expected or maybe even allowed. I remember wondering, because so much blood, so much gore. I mean, it was a watch that I don't regret. I enjoyed the film as much as I could, given the stuff I was struggling with. But I will say this. Jen and I spoke that evening, and I said, hey, I want you to watch the trailer. And I had her watch the trailer for the remake.
Okay.
And I said, I don't know why, but since Halloween's coming up, our tradition every year is we watch scary movies on Halloween, which is also our anniversary.
Okay.
And I'm like, I'm thinking this needs to be the one we watch. And she watched it, and this reaction, I'm going to have to act it out for you, tells me that we more than likely will. Because we watched the trailer for the remake, and she sat there for a moment, and then she went like this. Okay. That tells me
yes,
that I'm more than likely going to see the remake. But
awesome.
And so again, I think it I did learn about the fact that not only were the actors from all over the place, they actually did their lines in their native tongue, and so a lot of dubbing was done for the final product. It was disconcerting in certain places, but it was also such that it's like any older film that you go back to. It stands out, the stuff that today wouldn't fly, and I think that's where I was sort of taken out of the effectiveness of the story. But as someone who was traumatized by the movie Tommy at the age of 5, don't ask me why I was taken to see it. This movie would have done a number on me, had I seen it the year it came out, because it was, again, very effective. And
Star Wars is coming out the same time.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it was interesting, and I thought to myself, I should do this more often. because now I know exactly what Paul's talking about. So,
Yeah.
so yeah.
And I'm totally stoked to hear. I will say, like, just comparatively speaking, I understand why the 77 version was as impactful as it was. If I had to watch another one again, I would definitely pick the Amazon one. Like, I
Sure.
definitely think that's a more it makes more sense. Like, the 70s, they were still all about Mr. Plot exposition showing up in the middle of the movie.
Right.
In this case, it was the psychologist, whatever,
Right.
You know,
with a young Udo Kier, by the way. I don't know if you noticed the gentleman that she was talking to before the older gentleman.
okay.
Kier, who played the head vampire in Blade, the first movie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was like, I know who that is, and I looked it up. I'm like, that's Udo Kier. So yeah,
I didn't. There you go. Learned something. Excellent.
Yeah.
I was because so a while back I did The Apple. I don't. That was the musical that I absolutely fell in love with and had to watch twice the week that I saw it. But then I also watched the pseudo sequel to Rocky Horror, and I briefly mentioned it as being one of the worst movies I've ever seen, and nobody should ever have to watch it again. But the lead actress in Suspiria was in that. So it's like the entire time I'm watching this, I'm like, God, I can't believe, like, 4 years from now, she's just going to end up making this horrible fucking pseudo sequel to
Rocky Horror. Oh my goodness. All right,
there you go. Suspiria. I watched the granddaddy of them all, the one that started the whole thing. So,
well, I was glad to join you on the journey, and we look forward to every week finding out what the hell Paul watched, because I think the list will continue to grow. Yeah, I'll be looking forward to the next time. So,
excellent. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's going to bring us to this week's real-time rewind, and I'm just going to tell you about a little movie called The Contender. Rod Lurie, director of this film, who directed The Outpost that we talked about recently in a past episode. I happened to speak to him on Twitter for a little bit. And yeah, it was pretty cool. And I was reminded by some of what people were posting that his filmography included this film, The Contender, with Joan Allen and Gary Oldman, Jeff Bridges. And I went and I rewatched it, and I even shared with him that I was going to talk about it in the segment, and he thanked me, and I was very proud. But yeah, no, it's a great a political thriller. And very timely when you consider that the main crux of the story is that Joan Allen plays a woman who has been nominated to replace the Vice President of the United States, who has in the film passed away. And so it's a whole nomination procedure that she has to be approved by the Senate, and it goes into the story points are about how one particular congressman does all he can to break her down by reaching into her past and trying to find sordid details about her and so forth. And so it's a story that we're seeing play out, again, talk about lessons not learned, in that we don't necessarily give people a fair shake, and we try to find things about them to hurt them politically. And so I just want to remind people it's out there, and it's The Contender, and I really love it. I rewatched it this week, and I encourage you to do the same, because Gary Oldman, man. Joan Allen, Jeff Bridges. It's a great cast. And so I'm not sure if you're familiar, either of you, with that film, but I enjoyed it very much, and I was glad to see it again.
I haven't seen it, but I'm aware of it. I'm aware of its existence.
Well, one of you is racing to watch it so we can assign it to the third one. So,
listen, it's really easy to find a movie that you two have watched that I haven't. So,
right.
Give me this one.
Okay.
So that we can assign it to Paul.
Yeah.
I'm all for it.
I'm not. He's talking to you. He is literally talking to you to say, go watch this movie so we don't have to give Paul Child's Play again.
That's right. We owe him.
Literally what's going on.
Yeah.
I hear you, Sergio, and I appreciate it.
Indeed. So, Susan, we'll fit that into your movie watching schedule so we can give it to Paul. And again, it really is a great watch, and it's just one of those that you kind of forget. Yeah, I mean, forgot it was out there. And so if we hadn't gone the route of The Outpost and gotten a chance to think about Rod Lurie and the work he's done, I wouldn't have been talking about it. So. All right. Well, with that, we're going to take a moment to remind you that you can find us on Facebook and Instagram. Make sure you do so. Give us a like, comment. We want to hear from you. We're actually going to maybe engage the audience, guys, for future movie assignments as well, or other ways in which they can participate with us. And pretty soon, I'd like us to think about how do we get together with some of our listeners to watch movies and stuff. The three of us used a service called 27, which we will encourage you to look up. And it's kind of Netflix party, but for everything. And actually, it's called something different now. But
Teleparty.
Teleparty, okay. But since we did watch the Trial of Chicago, let me try that again. Since we did watch the Trial of Chicago 7 together, we will let you know that it was because we used a service called 27. Look them up. There's the logo on the screen. And get together with your friends, watch movies together and such. And just know that if you eat candy, it's going to be really loud. So
It'd be really, really.
But other than that, it was
man.
fantastic.
Yeah, great experience.
So, yeah,
minus
indeed.
the candy.
I love my Sour Patch Kids, man. So,
What, Sergio? I can hear you.
This was
Yep,
the bag.
there they are.
That was the offending bag. So that looked really weird on screen. All right. So normally we have real quick reviews, but Paul, Susan, I don't know that we have one this week, do we?
Well, I got a little something.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I got a little something. So, it's not a recent thing, but I watched the Ip Man quadrilogy.
Yes, I did see
Have you
that
seen those?
from our friends at Letterboxd, and so I saw that you had seen all four.
Right.
So,
Right. And I'm here to tell you, Donnie Yen can be in any damn thing he ever wants, and I will watch it and be happy. Donnie Yen, most American audiences are going to know him from Rogue One. He was the blind sort of protector of the Kyber crystals on Jeddah, and he's amazing in that movie. And then to go and see him in these in this quadrilogy that spans, well, in movie time, it spans about 30 years of this person's life. It's actually based on an actual life person.
oh,
But about 12 years of movie making time. And it's really good. All I got to say, the first one is fantastic. The fourth one is almost better, if not better, and maybe at very least equally as good. And then the second and third one are worth a watch as well. That's what I'll say about it. I if you're a fan at all of Kung Fu movies, at even the slightest bit, if you just saw Kung Fu Hustle and thought it was great and then just let it slip your mind and you never watch it again, if you watched Kill Bill and were like, oh, this is really cool, I someday should go see movies that have more of this, and then just never did, I highly recommend Ip Man. They're on Netflix, really easy to find, extremely accessible, very accessible, very solid. If the third one drives you nuts for the first hour because the last half hour is amazing, you're not alone. The first hour has Mike Tyson in it, and you're just the entire movie, I'm sitting there wondering, why the hell am I watching Mike Tyson? Why is Mike Tyson on my screen?
And I'm over here sitting going, sign me up. So, all right. Well, the Ip Man series, again, available on Netflix. I'm going to add it to my list. I saw that you had watched it. That's really, I feel like I have a sideline into y'all's brains.
Yes.
Because now through Letterboxd, I can see what you're watching when you post it. And it also makes me more self-conscious about what I watch. Because my contribution to Real Quick Reviews is don't watch The Courier. And I'll just leave it at that. So sometimes Gary Oldman misses.
Yeah.
So.
I saw your your thing that you watched that, and then I saw the rating that you gave it, and then I was like, what is this movie? And then I clicked on it. It's like, oh, he watched it because he likes Gary Oldman. Like that's literally the thing that popped in my head. Like,
Yeah.
Okay, so literally he just stumbled upon a Gary Oldman movie. He's like, oh, I'll watch this, and then it was like, I can only imagine your pain and disappointment.
Jen and I were sitting at dinner going, like we do every night. We're like, what are we going to watch? And I was like, let's do some Gary Oldman. And we clicked and we like, oh, gosh, eat quick. So let's get this done. So it's a quick 97 minutes. All right. Well, with that, that brings us to the conclusion of Real Quick Reviews. We love hearing from you. So we thank you for joining us here on YouTube. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, click the notification bell, but also notice that you can like our videos. So if you enjoyed the show, give it a like. And also, there's a comment section. We want to hear from you. Tell us what you think about the shows and the episodes week to week. Tell us what we can work on to do things better. And also let us know what you want us to talk about, because we will find a way to make that happen. Susan, Paul, yet again, it's been fun talking movies with the both of you. I enjoy it. And I think next week it's time for
Netflix roulette.
Netflix roulette, absolutely. And we're going to be
Halloween
in the
edition.
week of Halloween edition. We're going to do horror films. I'm already scared. So, so that will be our next episode. We're going to get back to our realgood.com roulette wheel and see what happens. So thank you both, as always. It's a great time.
Awesome. Thank
Great
you,
for it.
Sergio.
All right. Well, we thank you once again for joining us. Remember, you're awesome, you're amazing, and the world's a better place because you are in it. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on the next Real to Real Talk.
Woo!
All right. Very, very good. I'm going to leave that in, Susan. So.
And